Hello, my fellow doers. I could do anything, and today I could talk to you about America's true leaders, the true people who run our country. Let's begin with a simple word: critarchy, or critocracy. It's a system of rule by judges, which was first mentioned in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. Book 17, or better known as the Book of Judges, right after Joshua's death in the Bible. So, the biblical judges versus political judges. The biblical judges have direct knowledge of God and that gives them the good representation of the Israelites. They were a group of people that the Israelites would go to and be like, yo, what's happening with this country? How are they communicating with us and stuff? And the judges would go to other countries and pretty much they were the rulers of them. They represented the Israelites and they were also the leaders, but they all worked together, which was pretty good. Now, the political judges, their direct knowledge of law gives them power to enforce laws. Now, they aren't the cops directly enforcing the laws, but they are the ones who pretty much say when a law is in effect and stuff like that. So, the biblical judges were well known, and I'm pretty sure some of you guys even know them or know of them. And the political judges, many of them are unknown, even though it's not like they're hiding or anything. It's just that a lot of people just aren't paying as much attention to politics, and a lot of people don't know who these judges are, which is very important. Now here are the judges, both biblical and political. Now, just off the top of my head, I know of both Samuel and Samson. Those are probably the most two famous of the list, but it's not hard to know who each and every judge is. I mean, they are in one of the best selling books of all time, so it makes sense if millions and millions and millions of people know who these judges are. But the judges of our own country, in the Supreme Court and stuff like this, like who are these people? Who's Roberts John or Samuel A. Altio? Like, I have no idea who those people are, and they're in the Supreme Court. Maybe I should look into it, right? I mean, maybe I should find out who these people are. I mean, they are the leaders of our country. The judges are the leaders. We are in a critocracy. Now, the Supremacy Clause, as stated in the United States Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2, pretty much says that the Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in the presence thereof, and all treaties made of or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. The judges in every state shall be bound thereby anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Now you may be thinking to yourself, what the hell does that mean? Well, any laws passed under the Constitution, treaties under the Constitution, anything added to the Constitution or taken away from the Constitution, that's the supreme law of the land. So the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. What the Constitution says is the supreme law. Pretty much every state, sure, has their own laws that may be different from state to state. But at the end of the day, the core laws that every state must follow are in the Constitution, and that's where it says the judges in every state shall be bound. Every state has to enforce these laws that are said in the Constitution. Okay, so the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. All right, how does that lead to judges being the rulers of America? That doesn't make any sense. Well, checks and balances. Let's go into it. The number one most powerful checks and balance is the judicial review, which gives the judicial branch the power to deem something unconstitutional. Say there's a law. Okay, well, that law isn't right because it prevents, black people from getting married to white people. It prevents interracial marriage. All right, that sounds constitutional because in, in section 14, this clause says everybody has the right to be protected under the law. That's how they use it, right? It's unconstitutional because in the Constitution it says right here that everybody's protected under the law. So they get to interpret the Constitution and say what it means. Now, when the founding fathers or the early politicians of America wrote this, they didn't see it as how you and I would think of interpretation. What me and you think of interpretation is, oh, look at this picture. What do you think it means? Interpret it for me. That's you giving your own understanding of what you think it is. Now, the founding fathers, early politicians, when they gave the power to the judicial branch to interpret the Constitution, they meant as they would read the constitutional laws and say them in layman's terms for everybody else. So, say the Constitution was like, thou can't commit murder on the 4th of every February. They would have to say, alright, they would come to the public, they'd be like, alright, so every February 4th, you can't commit murder, right? That's what it says in the Constitution. They tell a dumbed down version. Now, obviously, I was using that as a made up, simplified example of what they were supposed to do with it. But when you give someone that power, they think, well, since we are the ones who are smarter than everybody, why don't we just say what we think the Constitution means so that it could do what we want and we could become a better country? But when people have that idea, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You may have a good idea, but it's ultimately going to lead you to crap. It's going to lead you to hell. That's what that quote is. So checks and balances, obviously the judiciary branch has the most power. And how do judges come into office? Well, the president appoints a judge, then the Senate approves a judge, and then that judge goes to the judicial branch. All right, are you following me? So if there's a Democratic or Republican president, they would want to choose a Democratic or Republican judge. So let's say there's a Democratic president. He would want to appoint a Democratic judge. Because, let me think about this. Let me tell you, they want people to agree with them, and the presidents know that if you got the legislative branch under you and the judicial branch under you, you're going to get everything you want across, which is really screwed up. So if there's a Democratic president, they're going to want most of the Senate to be Democratic, and they're going to want most of the judicial branch to be Democratic. So they're going to want the judges to be mainly Democratic. So they're going to appoint a Democratic judge. Then they're going to pass it through Senate. And if most of Senate is Democratic, then that means that they're going to be able to have a Democratic judge. Now, if you have Democratic judge, you could appoint senators. And if you have Democratic senators, then senators are going to help there be a Democratic president. You see the cycle that's going? But it all starts mainly with the judicial branch. The judicial branch and their judicial review. Let's continue. We'll elaborate on that idea later. So, here are some groundbreaking cases that went to the judicial, to the Supreme Court and the judicial branch, and they used their judiciary review to deem things constitutional or unconstitutional. Such as, I'm pretty sure you guys know the Hodges case, where it is legal to marry everybody in the same sex. Okay, well, that's a huge law to be spread across the whole country. Even when the country of the United States could clearly see the the things that were wrong with the country, such as slavery. Thomas Jefferson and many other of the founding fathers were against slavery. Now you're saying to yourself, wait, Thomas Jefferson owned a plantation. Yeah, but he completely disbanded his own plantation after the founding of America. So, founding fathers could see the bad in America, and they, formed together, and as things got bigger in the country, they were trying to abolish slavery or get rid of it and talking down with it. Now, what did they do with it? They completely went state to state asking which states were for it and which states were against it. Now, obviously, there was an overwhelming amount of states that were for slavery because back in the early days of America, they depended heavily on slavery. So, if that law were to happen today, do you think we would go state to state asking who thinks slavery should be abolished or kept? Well, obviously, everybody's going to be against it, but let's just imagine, okay? Obviously, it's going to take a long time. Now, the judicial branch views this as, well, we are smarter than everybody else. We know this is right, so let's just get our point across and deem this unconstitutional. Now, back in the day, like the founding fathers and what they were writing as the judiciary review and what they wanted as the checks and balances obviously is not the same as what we view it as today, and that's probably one of the biggest problems. But things like this would have to take a year or most, when they would ask state to state, making sure that we the people, are heard and our voice. Now, have you guys ever heard of the silent majority? That's a two-word quote. The silent majority. That's pretty much saying that when there are people speaking out on a topic, many times they are the minority. Now, you may be asking yourself, what? That doesn't make any sense. If they're the minority, then how are they getting their points across? Well, because they're speaking out on it, such as gun laws in America. Believe it or not, most Americans want there to be guns. Now, you're thinking to yourself, wait, but everywhere I look on the news and every person I see getting interviewed is heavily against guns. Well, did you know we have almost 2 guns per person in America? That's a statistic, okay? That clearly shows that Americans want their guns and want to keep their guns. And that's a large majority of Americans that want to keep their guns. But there's a silent minority, a small group of people that are speaking out and getting their point across. So, with the Hodges case, which is the homosexual marriage, the silent minority were speaking out so heavily on it. You were seeing not riots, pretty much riots, but they weren't causing riots. Protests and all this all across the country. And yet, most of the people were against it. Why do you think there were so little states that actually offered same-sex marriage? Because most of the states were against it. There were so little states. Before this law, there was maybe 1 or 2 that were for it. Now, that clearly shows out of the 50 states that most of them were against the same-sex marriage law, right? And how do those laws come to action? Well, someone asks for a law, it gets passed up through the ranks, then the people of that state get to vote on it. So, obviously, throughout all the 50 states, something like this must have come up. Oh yeah, let's have same-sex marriage. All right, well, it got completely shut down because of the voters in that state, showing that the majority is having their words shut down by the silent minority. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, we the people, America is built on the majority rules but minority rights. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before, but you should have. The majority rules, which is pretty much if most people agree on it, that's the way of the land. That's how the law is going to get passed because most people in the country agree with it. Now, you can't please everybody, but you could please the majority, right? Now, the minority also has certain rights, unalienable rights, and everything like this. Now, sure, you could view it as, well, the minority of same-sex marriage, they have that right, even though the majority is shutting it down. All right, well, let's have each state vote on it, just as they did back in this day with slavery. Have a huge thing on it. The judicial branch completely just deemed it. Oh yeah, right here in the Constitution. You guys can't see it, but we could see it. It says right here that everybody has equal protection. And now, what the founding fathers meant by that is there could be homosexual marriage. Yeah, that's completely what the founding fathers thought about when they were writing this clause in the Constitution. What the hell? What? I don't care if you're for or against gay marriage, but you could clearly see how messed up this is and how wrong it is for the judicial branch to do this. Now, I myself am for interracial marriage, which the Loving versus Virginia case was based on. Yeah, you want to marry someone that isn't the same race as you, so be it. That's good for you. And I'm pretty sure in 1967, which was during civil rights, and all this amazing things were happening in America that were trying to make America great, all these things were happening. And I'm pretty sure the majority of people wanted interracial marriage and wanted it to happen. Which is why there wasn't such a big of an uproar of, people against it. But still, laws like that, which I'm completely for, about interracial marriage, were completely passed disregarding people. Now, even if those people I view as maybe wrong or ignorant in their views, I would still want their voice to be heard. And their voice is being heard by a vote. But if they don't have that right to vote on a subject as big as this, it's all across the nation. The Loving versus Virginia. That's all across the nation. Everybody, regardless of your race, you get to marry that another person. I still want everybody's voice to be heard, even if they are a minority, even if they are majority. I just want everybody's voice to be heard, and I want everybody to have the opportunity to vote on a subject as big as this, a subject that is widespread across the whole country. Now, some of these, such as the Lawrence versus Texas, which is about sodomy and pretty much saying homosexual sex is against the law and illegal. Obviously, that was shut down, but still, a lot of these on this, actually, all of these on the list were groundbreaking, huge cases that the people had no word in. It was just the judicial branch that would deem this, oh yeah, it's unconstitutional. Oh yeah, it's constitutional. Yeah, right here in the Constitution it says this. So yeah, it's legal for all the whole country. Now, you could see that they are going by their own agenda and using these cases to get things across. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. Well, actually, I am saying it's wrong. Yes, that's very wrong. Very wrong for them to do it. Whether I agree or disagree with their decisions, I still view it as being wrong. Abraham Lincoln once said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Think about that for a moment. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln was a smart man, a Republican. Some say if he were to be elected today, he would be a Democrat. Shows how much the parties have drifted away from their core values. People are more worried about their own agenda than the country itself. We are divided on our ideals rather than thinking of it as a whole. And that is why we are against ourselves now more than ever. Why there are so many people against the cops. Why there are so many people against the government. It's because we're divided by our ideals. And now more than ever, people are pointing it out. President Obama, when he gave his speech on the cops who were murdered, he was saying how the cops never knew what it was like to be black, to be grown up with the struggle. How could Obama say that? Obama went to Ivy League schools, grew up in Kenya, where his father was a business owner, came back to Hawaii. He passed high school, he went off to an Ivy League school, became a lawyer. Knowing about struggles, they're just on their own agenda, and they're using the American mind to get that across. They're throwing out morals because they see that the country has gotten rid of it. Less and less people are becoming religious. More and more people are having open minds. More and more people are swaying away from the ideals that America once had. And they're using that to their advantage. They're using it to get their own agendas across. They don't even care about the people. They're just worried about making what they want happen. President Obama, when he was running for president, he was saying how it was horrible for a president like President Bush to raise the national debt from $3 trillion to $6 trillion. How it was inhumane. How he was pretty much spitting in the face of the country when he did that. When President Bush raised the debt from $3 trillion to $6 trillion. President Obama became president. President Obama raised the debt from $7 trillion, and as he's nearly leaving, $21 trillion in debt. They don't care about us. They'll say anything they want, anything they can to get appointed president, and they'll be on their own agenda. And when someone real, someone who pays attention to the Constitution, Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, when they come by, people just shut them down. Everybody, whether they're Democrat or Republican, won't listen. Because all the politicians, every single politician, modern politicians, are against the Constitution. And the Constitution is the only thing we have. The only thing the American people have that gives them some significance of power. Why do you think every time the president will talk in a subject in which he cannot do anything about, he blames it on the Constitution? The Constitution is so restricting that I can't get my points across. The Constitution won't let me do this, won't let me do that. The Constitution is made that way for a reason. The Constitution is made that way to prevent tyranny, to prevent critocracy, to prevent everything that is happening to our country right now. And that is because we have ignored our morals and we have ignored the Constitution. Less and less people are becoming educated on what's happening in our country. Less and less people even understand politics. Less and less people are paying attention. They only watch the news when a big voting event is going to happen. None of them vote on the senators, the executives of what their country is on. That's the only thing they care about, the president. They think small town politicians don't matter. Next thing you know, the small town politicians are moving up, doing shady business. And then next thing you know, they're running for president. You say to yourself, I never even heard of this person before. But you voted for him to be senator. Man, I hate this guy and what he does with his laws. I hate how he screws us over so many times with all these dang taxes. You voted for him, though. People just need to pay attention more. Pay attention more. Don't view one source. I always tell people this. Because I have somewhat of an understanding on politics, don't just listen to me. That is the worst thing. Go out for yourself. Go out and look at links. Go out and read multiple links, hundreds, based on one subject. And then you will have an understanding of what it is about. Because most of the time, people just watch TV. Most of the time, people will go on Facebook. Oh, read this article that is clearly one-sided. Did you know nearly 75 to 90% of the media is controlled by Democrats? Now, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I care about that your voice is being heard. But when most of the media is against you, they're going to be throwing you hard questions. They're going to be making you seem like a moron, making you seem like an idiot. A house divided against itself cannot stand. This is tearing our country apart. The Judicial Branch is the one running our country. They're the real leaders behind the scenes pulling the strings on the president. That is why this vote, whether you vote for Hillary or Trump, means the most. There are two judges leaving. Now, if Hillary gets appointed, she will obviously put two Democrats, which will make the Judiciary Branch primarily Democrat, while the Senate right now is primarily Republican. But if primarily the Judiciary Branch is Democrat, they're going to impeach senators, and they're going to make the Senate primarily Democrat. And if we have a Democratic president, obviously you could see that they're on their own agenda to do their own things. We can only hope that the ignorance that Trump has of politics, we can only hope that he picks judges that matter. We can only hope that his ignorance gives him the decisions to make America great again. While Hillary, we already know she's here to screw over the country just as President Obama did. But the presidents don't even matter. It's the Judiciary Branch. They can deem anything they want constitutional or unconstitutional, and the people have no say in it. The people don't have anything to say about it. If the Judiciary Branch were to come out and say the Constitution is unconstitutional, which is what they're pushing for so heavily, they're trying their hardest to get rid of the Constitution. Because if there's no Constitution, there's no balancing of each branch. There's no concrete law, and they could write and sway laws in whichever way they want to benefit themselves the most. Now they're already bending the Constitution to extreme lengths to they make it say whatever they want it to say. Read it for yourself. Go out and look at the Constitution. It's on the internet. Believe me, they have concrete pictures. They have concrete text that is exactly what is written in the Constitution. Read it for yourself. Interpret it for yourself. Don't let these big guys in the Judiciary Branch say what it means. Oh yeah, we have our degrees in law, right? We know what the law means. Well, did you know that if you want to become a lawyer today in America, you don't read the Constitution? Wait, what? But in the Constitution, it says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So if you want to be a lawyer, wouldn't you want to know what the supreme law of the land is? No. In America today, if you want to become a lawyer, you learn through cases. It's called case study. Every single lawyer school, or whatever the freak you want to call it, learns case studies from the Ivy Leagues to the regular 4 years. You will learn about case studies. Case studies, case studies, case studies. What are case studies? Well, a ruling on this case happened, so we could use that to our advantage in this case, which is why if you were to watch a real a real case, which kind of boring. Yeah, if you watch a real case happening, oh yeah, this person it's not like, first 48 where it's like, holy crap, this crazy thing's happening. No, it's like, well, yeah, this person is wanted for grand larceny, and as you guys see in case 32 of the Wilson versus Anderson, this guy was also wanted for grand larceny, and he got off free, so you should let our guy off free. That's pretty much what the hell it is. Now, it may sound ignorant. You may be like, that's retarded. That's so stupid. Why would they do that? The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. It says it in the Constitution. And they don't even learn about the Constitution, lawyers. They just learn about case studies. They just learn case studies. And most of the time, those case studies have nothing to do with the Constitution. Then those lawyers become judges. Then they become Supreme Court judges. And since all they know about is case studies, they think, well, I got to this point for a reason. I know a lot about the law. I know about a lot of cases that have happened and what they were ruled. But how does that apply to the Constitution, which is the Supreme Court of which is the supreme law of the land? It doesn't apply to it. And the Judicial Branch has this idea. It's just power that really corrupts. But they'll get to that point and they'll see, well, we are truly smarter than everybody else because we know extensively of these cases and we've studied them and we know the results. So we could apply this to our current state in the country, and we could deem this unconstitutional based on this case, based on right here. Oh yeah, but we still got a constitutional law of the land. Alright, whatever. Let's just pick a clause, whatever one it is, and just say it means this. Oh yeah. Alright, cool. That's pretty much what happened. I guarantee if you watch C-SPAN, which people are like, what the hell is C-SPAN? Watch that crap, okay? It's gonna be boring as heck, but if you want to know about politicians and politics, and you want to stop being screwed over by politics, watch that crap. It's literally a camera in a room. Maybe it's in Congress. Maybe it's them talking about what's happening for the day. Oh yeah, so this is what's happening with the laws, and believe me, we need this to happen. We need people to pay attention more and more because they're just screwing us over at every corner. And people are like, well, that's their fault, they're just corrupt a-holes. Well, no, that's our fault for not paying attention to the politics and not paying attention to who we're voting for. So we're voting for the wrong people, and we only think the vote that matters is for president, when in reality anything small, congressman, senator, anything small. So what if it's just gonna be a freaking, board directors, Anderson, which you're like, what the hell what is that job for? Let's talk about the money spent in America too. There are so many jobs that could easily be cut out. They literally do nothing. But because we vote for it, because the Judiciary Branch, because we don't understand politics, we think, oh yeah, that job is completely valuable. If you go and had a list of every job that is supplied by the government, oh yeah, USPS, the Postal Service, yeah, that matters, that's cool. Wait, what the hell, what's this job? I don't even understand that word. I guarantee that's going to be 90% of the list. Jobs you don't even understand what the heck they do, who they are, and if you review it, it'll be something small. Oh yeah, they check the pH levels in the water. And they get paid, how much? $500,000 a year for that? Pay attention to politics. Judiciary Branch are the ones pulling the strings because they get to deem things constitutional and unconstitutional, and they have no idea what the Constitution is like because every lawyer school in America teaches case studies, and case studies have nothing to do with the Constitution. Do you see what's happening here? And they see themselves as being these smart geniuses, and they know what's right for the country. So they make things happen. They pass huge laws that cause so much controversy, and so much people are against it. They still pass it. You're thinking to yourself, what are you talking about? All of these happening right here. All of those. There are literally thousands of more cases. Those were just the biggest cases that I think people would understand and or know about. You could look up these cases. Some of them you may be for, some of them you may be against. Regardless if you're for or against it, you should have the idea that everybody's voice should be heard. That's in the Constitution, freedom of speech, right? And our freedom of speech with the government is through vote. People, like Obama said, don't boo, vote, right? Regardless of what you're talking about. Don't be against it, go and vote. If you're agreeing with me and what I say, go vote for it. If you're against what I say, then go and vote for it. Now, what do you how am I voting when I don't like it? Thumbs down, dislike if you don't like what I'm saying. That's an excellent analogy. On videos, we were to do this, the freedom of speech. Obviously, it's not going to be easy for a huge YouTuber to read and see every comment, but they could see the likes and dislikes. They could see whether things are well received or disliked, and they will change it or adapt to that so that everybody would like it. Through votes, right? But the Judicial Branch, because they know the people are ignorant. Did you know the most amount of people that vote are from the ages of 45 to 50 to plus? 50 and older are the highest percentage of voters. So let's say there's 150 50-year-olds. There's going to be around 90 of them that vote. Now, if there's 100 18 to 20-year-olds, about 17 of them are going to vote because they don't pay attention to it. And they only see the ignorance of themselves and think, oh yeah, the government's for us because we like this guy. We scream and shout and they're listening to us. No. They never listen. They're not going to listen unless you vote. Because regardless of what you say on TV or what you protest about, if you're not voting on it, then it literally does nothing. It does nothing. Absolutely nothing. You may be saying to yourself, oh yeah, look, I got 1,000 signatures for this, and we held a 4-day protest. But when the subject comes up on the ballot, which you are fighting so hard to be against, when it comes on the ballot, it passes. Wait, this kid had 1,000 signatures. There was literally so much people at the rallies that he had for 4 days. Then why did the law get passed? Because people don't vote. And everybody in politics could see this. So that's why they cater to certain groups. Sure, Hillary Clinton, oh yeah, I understand the young people. They don't even care about the young people. There are so little amounts of young people that vote compared to older age groups that I don't even understand why they're trying. And you may be thinking to yourself, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. There are statistics that the government takes that you could view online, which I think is pretty cool. The government's putting that statistic out. The amount of people per age group in which they vote on. Just look it up, okay? It's on a government-approved website, okay? Look it up. And you will see the truth. So, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We must vote. We have to unite together and fix what's wrong with the country. First of all, pay attention to the politics, because the politicians are running the show, when in reality, the Constitution says we the people have the power over the government. That's how it was created, that's how it's supposed to be. But the people, how they are right now, they're bent over backwards and taking whatever is given to them. And we complain, but we don't vote, and that's where our biggest issue is. We need to vote, okay? Pay attention. Judicial Branch are the ones running the show because they get to deem things constitutional or unconstitutional. They get to pass huge laws across the country, even if most of the people are against it. They get to pass them because they get to deem things constitutional or unconstitutional. And the people may complain, oh, why did they do that? Well, you didn't vote. What do you mean? I mean, obviously, if you were paying attention to this person through their ranks, then you would understand their ideals. Their ideals that is obviously going to show once they get to power. Say there's someone against abortion. They're rising through the ranks. They're running for president. You never even heard of them before. Then they bring up the fact that they're against abortion. Oh, crap, I never heard of that before. They're already president. Well, if you were paying attention to them before and you were voting against them based on their ideals, then you would understand. But because people are paying less and less about politicians, their ideals are going more and more crap. More and more politicians are having more and more horrible ideals, more and more horrible morals. And people complain, dang, why do they like making the rich rich and the poor poor? Well, that's their ideal. That's their moral. That's what they like. You weren't paying attention to before, but now you're all of a sudden paying attention once it hits you. You're a little bit too late. Pay attention to politics, man. Just pay attention. And realize the Judicial Branch is screwing you over because they get to deem things constitutional or unconstitutional. I'm stressing this so much, but people will not listen. Why? I could do anything. And I gave a short, small rant on politics. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to comment on what you want me to do next, because I could do anything. Like this video or dislike it. Vote on it on whether you agree or disagree with what I have to say. Remember to subscribe to become a doer today. I think everybody's voice should be heard, regardless of their ideals. Regardless if I'm for or against what they have to say, I think they should be heard. I hope you guys feel the same way. Thank you, and see you guys next time.